Louis Quilico was one of the leading operatic baritones of the 20th century. His sudden passing on July 15th, 2000 was a great loss to the musical world. Quilico performed at many of the world's great opera houses: Covent Garden, the Paris Opera, the Bolshoi, and the Vienna Staatsoper, to name only a few. He was a stalwart of the Metropolitan Opera, appearing nearly 300 times over 25 consecutive years. At the Met, he sang under the baton of James Levine, Zubin Mehta, Richard Bonynge and Claudio Abbado, and alongside tenors including Luciano Pavarotti, Placido Domingo, John Vickers and José Carreras, and sopranos Joan Sutherland, Renata Tebaldi, Renata Scotto, and Beverly Sills. Louis Quilico was an ideal interpreter of the great Italian and French composers, but it was his defining portrayal of Rigoletto, the hunchbacked jester in Verdi's tragic masterpiece, that won him international acclaim, as well as the nickname Mr. Rigoletto. He sang the role more than 500 times, the last being at the National Arts Centre in Ottawa in September of 1994. After his retirement from the operatic stage in 1998, he continued to perform, touring extensively with his wife, the celebrated pianist Christina Petrowska Quilico. Together they made 4 recordings and a teaching video, and collaborated on the book Mr. Rigoletto in Conversation with Louis Quilico. In this book, Quilico shared his views on singing, on opera, and on his signature role, Rigoletto. He also talked about his own personally devised vocal techniques, sharing them with a new generation of singers. What is missing in the printed version of these conversations is Quilico's own voice and his unique personality. In these recordings, we hear him speak in his own words, with his own voice, unfiltered and unedited. Speaking personally, baritone Louis Quilico, Mr. Rigoletto, in conversation with Christina Petrowska Quilico. In this conversation, Louis compares and contrasts some of the characters he's portrayed: Scarpia in Puccini's Tosca and Iago in Verdi's Otello, Renato in Un ballo in maschera, and Rodrigo in Don Carlo.
Do you prefer singing opera to recitals?
Well, I have to say one thing. For me, I was more an operatic singer than I was a recitalist. For some people, I had a very good friend of mine that recital was for him absolutely a must. His name was Richard Vero. But me, I like the recital. But the only thing is, if you sing a lot of recital, but if you sing 1 or 2 recital a year, it's not very interesting, because you have to learn a repertoire that is quite a bit. And why you're learning it? It's because for once, it makes it very difficult.
An astounding performance of Scarpia, but one of the classic moments of the opera that's going to go down in history was when the soprano Tosca had the famous line. You say it.
The famous line is E avanti a lui tremava tutta Rome.
And what's the translation?
And in front of him, Louis, it's not me, it's him. In front of him, all Rome trembled, because he was a very, if you know the story of Tosca, Scarpia was a very, very nasty chief of police. he was a narrativist. He was everything you can think of about it, and he was shrewd. He was nobody. You know, it's one of these things that an evil man. That's what he was. To get what he wanted, he would do anything.
Yeah, but last night after
Well, the point is, the funniest thing about it, and being right next to her, at first I could not understand too, because I even turned towards her and I was going to give her the line, because I thought she had forgotten the line.
Yeah, can you explain what happened?
Well, she started to say, speaking, because some soprano, they sing it, some other, they speak it. It could be said, e avanti a lui tremava tutta Roma, or e avanti a lui tremava tutta Roma. And she did the first part, e avanti a lui, she spoke it. But the funniest thing about it, I remember very clearly that she was, and she said it after we asked her, she was not sure if she was going to do the end of the line, speaking or singing. And that was the indecision. And everybody, even the conductor, thought she had a blank.
Yeah, it seemed from the audience's point of view that she had completely frozen and had forgotten the famous line.
Well, I made a joke out of it. I says, what can you do? She says, e avanti lui. That means me, he
That's
had
right.
in front of him, and she was speechless after that.
That's right.
But it was not that. It was really, and I remember that she went, and my feeling was that she wanted to sing it, but then she changed her mind because she started to say the line, she spoke it.
Yeah. Well, in Tosca, I find that some of the wonderful music that's not spoken enough about is the aria for the baritone, the Te Deum, because everybody talks about the one soprano aria and the two tenor arias that are so famous. Can you explain in your words what makes the Te Deum, for example, such a fabulous piece of music?
Well, first of all, if you think about the words are incredible, wonderful and everything, but it's not only the words, is that all of a sudden you have this orchestration that is tremendous. You have the chorus that's so tremendous, and Scarpia that is so tremendous. It's musically, I think it's practically one of the most perfect music passage of anything that ever been written. Puccini was really in an inspiration, tremendous inspiration.
Would not the character of Scarpia, especially in today's society when we hear of all sorts of domestic murders and that, the character of Scarpia, who was obsessed with Tosca, how do you feel about him?
Well, if we talk about that, look at just what happened with O.J. Simpson, Nobody, say, it's something similar to it. He resulted at the end in the killing. But in those years, it's a drama that could be very well lived today. But at the same time, it's going to be very difficult to live this kind of drama. Because the point is, unless you are in this country, oppressed country, where there's not much supervision in government or anything like that. But today, if you come in our society, it's very difficult to have this because there's too much people watching the other people, and that is the thing that is Scarpia. I don't know. It could maybe raise again, but it's very difficult.
No, but as a personality, here you have the classic triangle. Man loves girl, girl loves other man, and you have Scarpia completely obsessed with jealousy and with love.
Wait. Let's not push the thing. Not jealousy, because the thing is, his problem is that he wants Tosca. He wants her for one thing alone. Give me an hour, then you can do what you want. That means let's make love, and that's all. That's the only thing he's interested. Except one thing he doesn't say to her. Very possible that after she would have done, give herself, he would have her killed. You know, that he had no remorse, no shame or anything like that. You know, for him, a human being was a piece of meat. That was it. There was nothing much more than that, you know. In fact, he said it before that, you know, he started to describe the people, they come to him, and, you know, because they want to save themselves, you know, and all of a sudden they come up, and even, he says, they even put their eyes, the fish high, and there's nothing I hate more than that. The only thing for me that is great is a beautiful glass of wine. That's it. And I mean, he's a very treacherous man. He's a man that has, how can I say, no soul. Simple as that.
And yet, the ensemble aria is so emotional.
But this is the beauty of composer. They'll give you practically the most beautiful music to show the most evil part of a character. Like Scarpia, he sings, it's an aria, but at the same time, it's not an aria like a Lucia Van Lesterio or something like that. It's the opposite, but at the same time, when you start to hear the music, it's revolting to think that a composer would write maybe the most divine music. I remember that when I first started to do Scarpia, hearing this music and being cut by it, and the first thing I know, I would sing it so sentimentally that conductor would say, "But Louis, you are making a mistake." "Oh no, it's such a beautiful music." But I did not realize that is the opposite. Verdi is exactly the same. Huh?
Yeah, how do you compare this with Iago?
Well, this one is arrive. Iago is not arrive. This is the point. This is where Iago would like to arrive, where Scarpia was. And I'm possibly sure, if you compare the two personality, for Scarpia going up to the power, and Iago wanted to go to the power, I'm possibly sure Scarpia could have sang very well the Iago Credo, because it's exactly the same kind of personality. But to arrive where he is, he doesn't have to go through that anymore. But at the same time, he likes to torture people, to torture other people. Like, for instance, when he's torturing Cavaradossi, Tosca is there, and he feels that inside of her, she's screaming, and there's nothing that he loves better. For him, it's his triumph. The suffering of a person makes him joyful. Joyful. He thrives on that. That's his way of living. At the same time, he wants to get certain things, but at the same time, he's a sadist. Let's put it this way.
So, in a sense, Scarpia is more sadistic than Iago, because Iago is doing it to gain power rather than the enjoyment of cruelty. How would you?
No, Iago, no, Scarpia is worse. But there's one thing that you have to understand. One has arrived. The other one wants to arrive. And which way that you're going to use? You see, this is the point. You have to be very careful when you want to go up to the power. But when you arrive there, you can do what you want. That is the point. Both of them, they have a very, very evil undercurrent in themselves.
But with Scarpia, I mean, he still lusts for Tosca, whereas Iago, does he lust for Desdemona?
Oh, not at all. For Iago, doesn't give a hoot about what he wants. Is the place of Othello. That's all he's interested. He'll use anything if he has to. In fact, he used Desdemona for that reason. But he hates testimony. He hates everything that has to do with human. You see, Scarpia is not a man that loves human people. That's exactly, when you look at them, they're both on the same vein. But like I said, one shows a man that has arrived can use all kind of evil things to be able to achieve what he wants. That means to achieve. He wants Tosca. How many maybe other Tosca that he did exactly the same thing? God knows. I'm saying Tosca. How many other women he did exactly the same thing? But the thing is, at that point, he has arrived. He used these things to be able to have a little bit more, and that's about it. But Iago, Iago's got to be careful. Because the thing is, if he's not careful, he's got to be even more subtle than Scarpia. Scarpia is not as subtle as Iago is. Scarpia, at a certain moment, when he's more or less the interrogation towards Tosca, he's got to show that he's a nice man. The voice got to change, and all of a sudden there's one phrase that he would come out, and he gets frustrated. You feel it, and all of a sudden comes in. Not only frustration, but he says in himself, his calculation, by giving the phrase that way, she might give up herself, and that's what happened with Tosca. Tosca came at a point where she cannot stand that kind of torture. It's not only interrogation, it's an interrogation, but at the same time a torture through Cavaradossi. She hears him scream, there's nothing she can do about it. The only thing she can do is to give herself or give up and give to Scarpia what he wants to hear.
Which part do you prefer to sing?
No,
They're both equal.
Both are so incredible that I have to say one thing. When you start to sing both part, and naturally I have to say one thing. Scarpia's got something that is so incredible. The entrance of Scarpia, I think anybody, you ask any singer, they'll tell you they would like to be Scarpia just for 1 minute. Just, oh God, not the Te Deum.
No.
The entrance.
And the entrance.
The orchestra comes so loud. Where else you have an entrance like this? There's nothing. I remember that I still listen to that music, and all of a sudden when the music plays, all of a sudden before I start to sing, I've got goosebumps just to listen to that music. Because you are saturated from a tremendous orchestration, so strong in your mind that it creates a tremendous satisfaction. It's funny because that's what the Scarpia is.
Are there any other roles that are equal in evil to these two, Iago and Scarpia? Can you talk about some other baritone roles where you're the villain?
I have to say one thing, like these two, I think these are very special. I don't recall, maybe some Wagner that I don't really know. I don't have the foggiest idea. But the thing is, for the rest, no. Like you, for instance, you have a role that is not at all like that, but who is very, very dramatic. At one point, as great as Iago or is in Pelléas et Mélisande, Golo. When you figure one thing, I never saw anything like it. You see, Scarpia is the entrance of Scarpia. A chord, boom, that's what you got. And in Pelléas et Mélisande, Golo comes in, and he's talking to his wife, and all of a sudden he looked at her hand, and he says, these beautiful little hand that I could break. Then all of a sudden he noticed that she's supposed to have a ring. And the ring is not there. And in one chord of the orchestra, tiens, où est la bague que je t'avais donnée? Where's the ring I give you? In one chord, it's a peak. Beauty, 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 love, love, love. And all of a sudden, not seeing the ring there, he wants to know what happened to the ring. And it's downhill after that. never stop. That is about, in all the roles that I can think of, I think that's maybe Scarpia and Iago are very, very, very special.
The other famous baritone role is Renato in Ballo Maschera that has the aria Eretu that...
Yeah, not only the aria, the whole thing is very interesting because that one too, for instance, all of a sudden in a chord, you notice that it's his wife. And all of a sudden, the whole tragedy starts from then.
It's a triangle again, and it has political overtones,
Absolutely.
as well as Tosca.
That's exactly right.
And Othello.
Oh yes.
And in Ballo Maschera.
You're always in politics. What more cruel than politics? Nothing.
Yeah, and the Eternal Triangle. Can you talk a bit about Renato and some of the performances you had? Because you've made a video. With Pavarotti.
Live from the Met, yes. I have to say one thing. As an opera, you talk about Scarpia, you talk about Othello, yes. But I have to say one thing. Renato is an incredible opera. Not Renato, the Ballo Maschera. Renato in the opera is an incredible part. Because Verdi, first of all, was a baritone. And I don't know, he cherished very much every baritone part he has done in his opera. And I have to consider myself maybe one of the luckiest men in the world to have been able to sing Verdi, Verdi, and Verdi. And that is the beauty of the opera of Verdi. Because especially the Ballo Maschera, there's the famous aria, Eretu. And I have to say one thing. I feel very sorry for the tenor and the soprano, because the thing is, with that simple aria, I always say, it's like you sing the aria, you put the opera in your pocket and you go home. Because if you sing it well, and I don't know, it was perfectly in my chord, and the success I had, you can name all the tenors in the world that I sang with. No one tenor could steal the show from Renato on the performance I was on. And this is not for bragging. I'm not saying that for bragging. It's because the opera is incredible. That's a little bit like Rigoletto. If you go according to that, Rigoletto, naturally it's the title role. Good, I'm with you 100%. But at the same time, the music is so incredible. The character is so incredible. Renato is a very beautiful character. At first, he's the most beautiful character you can think of. But all of a sudden, when he realizes he's been betrayed by his friend, the count or the king, now there's no more friendship. Especially it's his wife.
He still remains a sympathetic character, so you can't hate him like you do Scarpia.
Well, you cannot, because all of a sudden, you are taken by him for one reason, because you know that he has been betrayed. And when a person is betrayed, he's the underdog, and people don't like that. And this is, I think, in one aspect, I think Renato has that force towards the public.
Can you talk a bit about Don Carlo? You had an experience in Madrid that you've spoken about several times, where you didn't recognize the areas from the opera Don Carlo. Remember Philip V and all this?
Oh well, that was not exactly the opera. The night before, I sang Don Carlos, and the funniest thing about it, I was leaving the next day to go to South America, Buenos Aires, to sing Iago, and all of a sudden I took the plane that night, and that was the day right after the Don Carlos. I felt very stupid, I have to say one thing, because it was so funny the way it happened. All of a sudden, the plane has to stop at Madrid to get some people. All of a sudden, we have trouble with the plane, and the plane did not leave before 7 o'clock the next morning. 7 o'clock the next night. But at 7 o'clock, I was in the airport. I was sleeping, and all of a sudden I see all the people passing, and they get in the bus, and I got with them. And all of a sudden, they're gonna take us to Madrid, and we arrive in Madrid. The bus driver gets out, goes in a hotel, comes back out. He says, "There's no place here. We have to go to L'Escurial." Well, okay, let's go to L'Escurial. But I have to say one thing. I think I was very tired. That's why I could not adjust myself to anything. We arrive at L'Escurial. Where do you think we're going to go and sleep? We're going to sleep at the Hotel Philip II. Okay, good. We go and sleep at Philip II. All of a sudden, I went to sleep, and at 9 o'clock, I slept about an hour. I wake up. And I get up and I wonder what is there to be visiting in here. And somebody says, "Well, there's the cathedral. If you want to go and see the cathedral." I says, "That's fine, good." And I go and visit. I visit the church. It's very beautiful. But it's an underage church. It's very, very nice. And all of a sudden comes the time that they close the church, and they says, "Everybody out." I walked out. All of a sudden, I'm outside. There's a guy selling postcards. He said, "You want to buy some postcards?" I said, "Oh, yeah, give me a few." And all of a sudden, he says, "How did you enjoy it?" I says, "Well, it's church." But he says, "Didn't you see the Chamber of the King?" I said, "No, I didn't see nothing." It still don't dawn on me, There I am at L'Escurial, at the Hotel Philip II. Anyway, he says, he's talking about the whole thing, the king and the pom-pom. All of a sudden, I said, "Well," he says, "Are you leaving very soon this afternoon?" He said, "No." I said, "Leaving 7 o'clock." He says, "Come back at 2 o'clock. He says, "It's going to be open. You can visit the Chamber of the King." I said, "All right." I go back at 2 o'clock. Still nothing done on me, The Don Carlo the night before, and nothing. Here I am, I arrived there, and all of a sudden waiting for our, the man who's going to make us visit, our guide, And all of a sudden, the guide started to talk, L'Escurial, the Chamber of the King, Philip II, nothing registered. Nothing. And all of a sudden he talks about L'Infante, nothing. All of a sudden he comes out with one word. And it's so funny because the name he names that I recognize appears at the beginning of the opera, and at the end of the opera I'm not there anymore. But I hear the name of that famous man at the beginning of the opera. And it's called Carlo V, Charles V. I says, wait a minute. Carlo V, Philip II, L'Infante, L'Escurial, what am I doing here? I'm writing the story of Don Carlos. I became frantic like a child because it was so funny. And all of a sudden I went through it. I looked at the chair of the king. He must have been a very, very small man, And his suit, they were on the bed there and everything. Boy, that was so funny to see that. I always thought that Philip II would be a tall man. No, he was a very small man, But that was my adventure with Don Carlos. That was very funny. I tell you one thing, I felt so bloody stupid not to have understood at the very beginning when they said L'Escurial. Because Philip II sings L'Escurial in his big aria.
Can you talk a little bit about your part?
Of Don Carlos? Well, the part of Posa, and we call him Posa, but in reality is Rodrigo. He's never called, I think Philip II calls him the Marqués de Posa. No, the Grand Inquisitor, Marqués de Posa. But it's one of these, it's a sad story, because in the whole of Don Carlos, If you look at it, is a man that is the only human man in the whole opera. He's a good man. He dies as a good man. The only thing is for him is, the true sense of those years when a man swear that he was going to help the crown, or he was going to be through the crown, something like that. Even if it meant to die, he would die for it. And that's what happened with Don Carlos. He's the man that all of a sudden he realized that the only one that has to become the king after Philip II will be the Infante. But the Infante, he's got to try to protect him against himself. But the big problem with the Infante is lunatic, In fact, apparently he used to have epilepsy and all that stuff, But the thing is, he tries, but at the end he gets killed because of that. The Inquisition realized that because first of all they want the Infante, because he's too much of a rebel. Because the Inquisition in those years, that was a terrible thing about I don't want to talk about the Catholic religion, but the thing is, in those years, the Inquisition was one of the worst things there was. That's why there was a lot of things that became against the Catholic religion, and we still have them today. For instance, the Freemason. The Freemason was in the time of the Inquisition. This way, people could help each other, because it seems that the Catholic religion was after everybody that would be against the religion, or any way you can see, even the power of the king or something like that, and it was not permitted. And this is why Posa, in a certain way, became an offender for that reason, helping a man who was against the Inquisition. But at the same time, when you think about the Infante was not a bad person. But at the same time, he was trying to help people, and it was against the Inquisition and the king. And that's why they want to try to kill him. But what happened? It's Posa that finally dies about it. It's a beautiful opera. The whole thing of Posa is so incredible. The music is always one of the greatest music ever been written, if you want to think about it, because everything is honest. It's an honest man. More honest than that, it's incredible for that reason. And it's funny that Verdi would have wrote that kind of things when you think that he wrote Iago after that,
What's the famous aria for baritone?
In Don Carlos, Per me giunto. In fact, it's not only it's two aria in one. It's not a cabaletta, because usually a cabaletta goes very fast. But there's another part of it that gives another side of Posa and all that. And while he's singing the aria, he has been shot. And it's more or less his last word to Don Carlos. And it's a wonderful